Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm professional BMX rider and mountain bike rider Anthony Napolitan, and today I'm going to show you how to travel with your mountain bike. So first thing you're going to want to figure out when you're traveling with your bike is what are you going to put the bike in? Some people use the cardboard boxes that their bike come in, and then other people use bike bags. Today, I'm going to show you how to pack it into this Evoc bike bag. So between the two options, I think the bike bag has more protection and it's easier to take around. This bike bag has wheels on it and a bunch of different handles where I can pull it behind me as I'm walking through the airport. Cardboard boxes are also really great as well. They're just a little bit more difficult to get around. And the good thing about cardboard boxes, sometimes if you're on kind of a looser trip, when you get to your final destination, you can kind of ditch the bike box and then go to another local bike store and pick up a new one. Just to give you a little insight of the bag, it fully unzips from the front. There's two compartments to put your wheels. And the inside of this bag has a ton of straps so that it stays secured. When you buy bags like these, usually they come with the owner's manual and it tells you what each strap does and how to properly strap the bike in. So now we're going to take a few steps to disassemble the bike so that we can get it into the bag properly. The first thing we're going to do is remove the pedals from the bike. So if you've never taken pedals off before, here's a little trick so that you know which way to go. When you're pedaling forward, that's always tightening the pedal. So if you have your bike upright and you turn the wrench back, it'll loosen it. The next step, we're going to want to take the rear wheel and the front wheel off. After you remove the wheel, you're going to want to put the axle back in. Just tighten it up just a little bit, snug it up. You just don't want it to back out while it's going through airport security and customs and all of that. I don't know. I can't tell if that's a 5 or a 6. It seems really loose. After I put the front axle back in, I'm going to go ahead and just snug these axle bolts up on the front here. That way the pinch bolts don't loosen up and get lost in the bag. It happens so many times where you're going through airport security and someone forgets to zip up a small section of your bag, and something small like this will loosen up and fall out of the bag in transit. All right, now that I have both wheels off, I'm going to take these little caliper spacers. I'm going to push them into place on each caliper. This is just in case your brake lever hits something in the bag and is pulled. That way your pistons don't collapse and then you'd have to prime apart later. So this just helps keep everything in place. All right, so this is kind of personal preference, but I highly suggest it. I'm going to remove the derailleur from the derailleur hanger. That way, if the bike gets banged around in transit, it doesn't bend your derailleur or your derailleur hanger. And as you guys know, a lot of derailleur hangers are very specific to the bike you ride, so it might be extremely difficult finding one if it accidentally gets bent. All right, so the next step is I'm going to loosen the valve cap on the forks, and I'm going to let some air out of the shock so that I can compress the shock, and that way the bike fits in the bag vertically. So I'm just going to hook the shock pump up to it. I'm going to see what I have in there, and I have all my settings and my pressures written down in my phone. And I'm just going to let some air out of it. All right, so next step is you've let all the air out of your fork. You're going to use a tie-down strap just to compress the fork and hold it in place while you're in travel so that the bike fits and stays in the bag. There we go. Good enough. So I generally place mine right underneath the bottom of the head tube on the triple tree clamp, and then right over the bridge that's above the front wheel, and that kind of holds it into place. All right, so just as a precaution, I'll take a black Sharpie and I'll trace out on my bars the inside of the design on this stem. That way, if the bars move, when I pull the stem off, I'll know exactly where they go. I'm going to remove the stem from the forks. So when you remove these bolts, you're just going to want to kind of pull them out, and then inside the bag the bars are going to hang out on the side and get strapped in. So I'm actually just going to put these bolts back in here and tighten them down so that they don't get lost. So if you're traveling with a trail bike, I recommend you removing the handlebars from the stem instead of removing the stem from the bike. That way your headset and everything stays really tight while you're traveling. In this case, this cap is going to keep everything tight, and it's just easier to remove the whole stem instead of the bars, because then I don't have to worry about lining the bars up and putting them exactly back to where they were. So in just a few minutes you'll see that when I put this bike inside the bag, the bars will actually be strapped into the bag right here. So they'll be right next to the bike and they won't move at all. All right, so if you're using a bike box and the inside of the box doesn't have straps to put the handlebars into, what you can do is get some foam tubing, which I'll show you in a little bit when I put this inside the bag, and you can line the bars in it, and then you can zip tie it to the bike. And that way it's not moving around or getting thrashed around inside the box. All right, so like I said before, I use this. You can get this at Home Depot or Lowe's. It is just black foam tubing. It's meant to insulate pipes. They come in like big 8-foot long pieces. So I will custom cut them to fit certain parts of the bike. So I'll put them on the rear triangle, the top tube, the down tube, and then I just use these little Velcro straps to secure them to the bike. That way it adds a little bit extra protection while the bike's traveling, especially if you have a full carbon bike like this one. It absolutely is worth like the dollar that you spend on these. That way it keeps that Kashima nice and protected, keeps the fork arms really protected. All right, so most of the bike is wrapped up and secured. That leaves the derailleur. I always like to wrap it. I have this like kind of foam covering, so I'll wrap the derailleur up with it and then secure it again with one of the Velcro straps. That way it's not banging around in the bag and hitting your bike, and more importantly, it gives the derailleur a little bit extra protection from being damaged. All right, so now that the bike is properly protected, I'm going to put the bike inside the bag and use all the straps that come mounted in the bag to secure it inside the bag. Again, there's a lot of straps inside this bag, so it does come with the owner's manual, and it tells you exactly how to strap the bike properly into the bag. I do this a lot, but I honestly always double check it just in case. So if you're putting your bike into a bike box, you're to the point where you're basically almost done. You've got the bike protected if you chose to do that. Now you're just going to drop it into the bike box, and once you drop it into the box, there will be space to put your front and rear wheels. And if you feel inclined to, you can remove your rotors as well, which is something I'll be doing here later in the video before I put it into the bike bag. And then once your bike is inside the box, you can choose to add extra padding to protect it. All right, so we're down to the final steps now. The bike is in the bag, it's strapped in, got the pedals in the bag, and right now I'm going to remove the rotors. Generally, I used to never take the rotors off. just because it's a pain in the butt. There's 6 bolts and you always like them to stay tight just so that your rotors aren't rattling, you know, when you put them back on, or they won't rattle loose. But last time I traveled, I ran into an issue where my bike bag must have got thrown around quite a bit and my rotors were a little bit bent, and it took a super long time to get them back to straight and not rubbing the brake pads. So this time around, I'm going to take the extra time and pull the rotors off and put them somewhere in the bike bag so that they won't be damaged. All right, so this bike bag has a separate compartment that the wheels can go in. That way it's not touching the bike at all. If you're putting your wheels into a cardboard box, I highly recommend that you zip tie the wheels to the frame or attach them to the bike somehow. That way they're not rolling around or bouncing around inside the bike box. If you don't have zip ties, just try and find some extra packing material and just really pack the inside of the box out. Another thing that some people do and don't do is some people like to let the air out of the tires. I never do that. There's no point in it. They're not going to explode inside the cargo hold of the plane. That's definitely a falsehood. So just to save yourself one extra step when you get to your final destination, and especially if you're not traveling with a pump, I always keep mine pumped up. Now that everything's in the bag, bike's secure, there's extra room in this thing, same as a cardboard box. If there's anything extra that you want to take with you, I always try and put my full face helmet in it so I don't have to carry it on. Just want to fit it in there properly. My riding shoes, kind of set them in there. We're going to zip the thing up. We're jet setting. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching my how-to. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below, and click to subscribe. Thank you.